See, I wasn't a football fan at the time, so I had no
they
recollection of that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't either. But
That's incredible. They did not cancel their schedule out of respect for that is incredible. I find that really incredible.
Yeah, we would think that'd be a no-brainer, wouldn't you?
Yeah. My God.
Terrible thing to say there.
Yeah.
But you would think that would just become so easily to.
That's
but
amazing.
then I mean, you listen to all these different. If you see the movie JFK, Oliver Stone movie, it's really a great film. But you don't realize, much like our friend, what's his name, Michael Moore.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
He's kind of a dishonest filmmaker.
Well, there are people who very much are hostile to the military, the FBI, the CIA, Lyndon Johnson, and they wanted to wrap this all up in a package and say it was some vast right-wing conspiracy. I find that to be just I simply don't buy that. The idea that military officers and the Central Intelligence Agency were going to conspire to kill their commander-in-chief, I just totally reject that. I don't believe that.
no,
Ben Franklin said that 3 Americans can keep a secret as long as 2 of them are dead. I mean, how do you keep all this quiet?
I'm just going to say, how could you
Yeah.
keep it quiet? And
Yeah.
particularly,
You
by,
have
the,
to-
by the way, that rifle was like a Mannlicher.
I remember that name,
Yeah,
Maserati
Mannlicher.
or
I remember
something
that
like
name,
that.
Mannlicher.
That's a car,
Mannlicher
isn't it?
something or other. Yeah. Yeah. How can you can't keep anything
Right.
secret anymore. I mean, Herman Cain will tell you that, huh?
Once you come out and when 3 of us say something, go, oh, I'll tell my wife.
Yeah,
Or
right.
I'll tell so-and-so. There's just that one. Well, it's out of the bag, right?
22 seconds later, the NKVD is hearing about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
We don't want to believe that the president of the United States could be killed by some loser, some nobody like Lee Harvey Oswald. So there has to be something bigger and more powerful behind that.
Well, to me, the most logical are one domestic and one foreign. Foreign being the Cubans, and the domestic being organized crime.
But if you're the Cubans and you're contemplating assassinating the president of the United States, and then someone finds out that you did it, what happens to Cuba 48 hours? Cuba 48 hours later would be a radioactive, smoking horror.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think that would be the real reaction. I mean, it might feel like doing something like that, but I don't think that would come about. Do you?
But they could have put
The country would have demanded it.
100 warships around it and just said, you give us, all the leaders, and otherwise we're going to start firing, and
I can see
you're
something like
going to
that.
starve to death or so. And organized crime, why would they want to do that? That only brings heat on them,
Yeah, but I mean, you do something quietly or a little message to future people. I don't know. That's just my own suspicion says that's one of the logical suspects, our own domestic. I mean, it's hard to accept that Americans would do that to other Americans, but this business about oil men and right wing and the CIA, in our popular fiction, their reputation has gone from the OSS in World War II, Office of Strategic Services.
Yeah.
People that really helped won the war behind the scenes to like this shadow government of evil people. And,
Well,
They're patriot. I mean, I look upon them as patriots who are serving the country. They're serving as courageously as those who serve in uniforms.
That's
They're almost like another branch of the armed forces.
They are quiet.
They don't wear uniforms, but they do everything else that
Covert.
the military. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
was going to say, and you'll never know. You'll really never know.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
They take a little some information here and turn it into who knows how much information they have to go through to come with anything.
And who's one of our biggest heroes for the last half century? The biggest heroes of American popular culture, James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
What is James Bond? He's a secret agent. He's part of a British intelligence, the equivalent of the CIA. In fact, Felix Leiter is his best friend, a CIA man. So how is it we have this heroic image of James Bond, and yet we believe all this nonsense about the CIA?
Yeah.
And like with the Oliver Stone film, he takes little scenes and they photograph them in not full color, and it's like in a silvery color, and it's not directly on the people, and you hear voices like Lyndon Johnson, or they're talking in the background, and that's got to have a big effect on your mind. I mean,
Sure.
Influence your subconscious even.
Well, whether it's Oliver Stone or Michael Moore, they don't just have an axe to grind. They've got a whole hardware store full of axes to grind.
I agree. So I mean, it's as I said, my own feelings are somewhere in the middle, and maybe if we live long enough, we'll know the whole story. Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, there are still people who believe there was a larger conspiracy behind the assassination of Lincoln. I mean, there are people who believe Edwin Stanton was behind the assassination of Lincoln.
Secretary of what was he?
Secretary of War.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is a perennial fact in American history: the unwillingness to believe what actually happened.
Yeah. Well, we are going to take a brief break here, folks. I know we want to show so much on you because we're going to shut the recorder off right now. So we don't know what's going to happen.
Well, you're listening to Meet the Chicago Historians on Monday, November the 21st, the year 2011, live and direct from the John Nevada Broadcast Center here in the northwest side of Chicago. And at this time, we'll talk about your roof. Hey, what condition is your roof in? You want to make sure that your roof is in real good shape for the wintertime, and you can do that by calling Best Brothers Roofing. And Best Brothers Roofing is at area code 630-616-1359. Give Mike Besh a call. He'll come out, look at your roof, and give you an estimate and go from there. You want to make sure that with the rain, the snow, the ice, the hail, and the whole 9 yards, that you have a good solid roof on your house, because you don't want to be having that drip on your living room floor, or in your bedroom, or in the den, or in the wherever. So give Mike a call. You can save a lot of money, because if your roof leaks, that means that your ceiling in your room will be wet, spotted, and maybe even fall. So you can avoid a double expense by calling Besh Brothers Roofing, Mike Besh, at area code 630-616-1359. Mike will come out with his red truck. He's got a all red truck with ladders on the top of the truck, and he's got big signs on the door on either side of the vehicle that says Besh Brothers Roofing. He'll come out, look at your roof, give you an estimate, and go from there. So don't wait, and don't be sorry. Don't have double expense. Take and give Mike a call at area code 630-616-1359. Talk to Mike and tell him you heard the commercial on Meet the Chicago Historians. So that's, again, Besh Brothers Roofing, area code 630-616-1359. Don't have double expense. Call Mike now. Have him take care of your roof, and you'll be very happy that you did. You're listening to Meet the Chicago Historians here on AM, here on Radio Internet, WJDR Internet Radio. And now we'll get back to Meet the Chicago Historians.
Hey, gang, we're back. And I lied to you. We didn't shut off the recorder. We just had a commercial message. Thanks, John. Thanks for doing a swell job there. John, do you have any recollections of the Kennedy assassination?
I sure do, gentlemen. I, at that time, was working for Illinois Bell Telephone Company, and I was at the corner of Touhy Avenue and Oriole in a gas station, putting in a payphone. And I was not very interested in putting in payphones, because every time I put one in, it was nothing but a problem. But anyways, I was in there, and I put the payphone in this gas station, and I pick up the phone, no dial tone. I thought to myself, what the devil is wrong now?
Yeah.
So I open up the phone. I'm taking my headset and testing all the wires. No dial tone. So I figure, well, I screwed up somewhere between the pay phone and the terminal hanging on the pole outside the gas station. So I went to in a little room there where the telephone wires come in from the outside. Take my headset, no dial tone. So I put on my belt, climbed the pole again, and like I said, it was a bad day. It was not a very, very, very nice day. Going on the terminal up on the pole, no dial tone. So I figured, well, what the devil is wrong? So I take my headset and go on another line because I was going to call the office to find out what's going on. When I went on somebody's line to call the office, no dial tone. So I figured, what the devil is wrong around here? You know, so all of a sudden I get dial tone after maybe about 5 or 10 minutes. So I called the office and I says, check these. Well, he says, you heard the news, didn't you? I says, no, what? He says, President Kennedy was assassinated. And he says what happens and what did happen is when there's a big emergency like that, a national emergency, everybody picks up their phone at the same time and ties up the central office. Mm-hmm. So after a fashion, I finally got dial tone, and I finally was able to test my payphone. I had no problems. Just the fact is that the central office was tied up with that everybody picks up the phone, and then, like I said, they just ran out of dial tone. So, and then that's what the problem was. Yeah. And then the day that they were going to have the funeral or the services or whatever, everybody was taking the day off. All companies were closing down in memory of the president. So I says to my boss, I says, hey, Lynn, I says, are we working tomorrow? Well, of course you're working tomorrow. Communications must go on. I says, thank you very much. I says, I'm a real American, and I says, but I understand communications must go on. And I worked.
Yeah.
And so a lot of places were closed, and a lot of people didn't want to have anybody come in their house, but I was there with that little green Hornet driving up and down the streets.
Yeah. Green Hornet, you mean a car?
No, that was the truck. Yeah, the truck with the ladders on it, yeah.
Now for many of our listeners who don't know, a payphone was something we used to have in the country where you could actually... You used to have booths years ago, or little shells later on.
That's where Clark Kent would change into Superman.
Right, yeah.
They were big and dark then, the old ones. But anyway, you could actually put a coin in and dial somewhere. And I guess we don't have too many of those anymore, do we?
No, we don't. No,
it was not something to invest in, was it?
Now that the cell phones came in, there's a lot of places, a lot of restaurants you go to, and you see the backboard on the wall with wires just hanging out.
Empty.
And as long as we're talking about November 22nd, a very dear friend who gave me the opportunity to be in radio broadcasting, and I was part of his station for 10 and a half years, and that was Joe Gentile. If he would have still been alive, he would have been 88 years old on the 22nd of November.
Wow.
So, of course, Joe passed away on October the 10th when we did our broadcast at the Fire Museum. Mm-hmm. And I must say, Joe was a great guy. I loved him, and I took care of him, and I just dedicated myself to him as if he was my real father.
Yeah.
So, in closing, I would just say, Joe Gentile, thank you for what you did for me for 10 and a half years, and may your soul rest in peace.
Amen.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
What you said, John, is so true, and obviously, I don't think anyone here could be as close as you were, and no one claimed to be. But what he did by having the station, the type of station it was like a community service. What it was the combination of the barber shop and the old Cracker Barrel, where people could actually get on and talk, where they could say what they wanted. These different independently, locally produced shows, and okay, so we weren't professional as such, but it was probably like radio was in the early days, and you didn't have to go talk to someone in the boardroom somewhere in New York to decide what you could do. And different shows we had. I know myself, my good friend, and I've said this before, Joe Mescal, my friend and partner, lifelong friend now, he told me about the station, and this will be almost 7 years ago now. It was, he said, Cop Talk was one on there, having been on the police department myself for 34 years, my only full-time job. I was interested in it. It was run by, it was hosted by Vic Justino, was a historian who used to be part of he's an emeritus member of the panel here. He was the host, and Bill Giaconetti was the main guy on it. He is the most decorated policeman in Chicago history, and it was interesting. 2 hours, and that followed up with one other show. I thought they were saying the Madonna Sports Show for the longest time. It was the Don of Sports Show, and I got to be friends with Don Figarelli through that, and many other people. I met some of the finest people. A couple of them sitting right here right now, and having my adult life, and people I consider to be true friends. So, thank you, Joe, and that was your way of sharing with us. So.
That's right. He gave us the opportunity to do this program, to do the Chicago Historian Show.
Yeah.
So,
and I used to listen to Cop Talk, and I would call in occasionally. I never was on the panel, but I the first broadcast I ever witnessed with Eddie Schwartz, and that was back in '76. Vic Justino was his sole guest, and they talked for 4 hours, just Chicago history. The thing about radio is that you can do an in-depth interview or study, if you will. We're talking half an hour on the Kennedy assassination. You couldn't do more than probably 3 minutes on TV or something.
Right.
And that's the difference.
It's so consuming.
Yeah.
No one even let you, right?
Short attention span. Coming up. There's always there has to be something new coming up every few minutes to hold people's attention.
Getting back before we get off the subject of the assassination, which we could probably talk all day about if we wanted to. You said you had a great admiration for Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
So as did I. And I was a 14-year-old when he ran when he was Kennedy Nixon in 1960. Well, they started the debates, the great debates, the first one being here at WBBM.
Right. Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, my mom, it must have been a Thursday or a Monday, because my mom and dad were out shopping. My sister was away at college. Phone rings afterward. Chicago Tribune wants to taking a poll about Mr. Ryan home. No, he's not home. Mrs. Ryan, no. Who's the oldest person home? Moi. I said, I am. Who are you? John T. Ryan. 14-year-old high school student. Actually, I wasn't going to be 14 till November 2nd. I think it was the day after was the election or something, November 4th or 3rd, I don't know. Well, what did you think about the debate? And I told them more or less, and they put a little capsulated version, and if you were voting for, who would you vote for, at the end. And I'm on the front page of the Tribune the next day, not me, but my name.
Yeah.
Along with a Pulitzer prize-winning cartoon. I think it's the one of, is it Parrish? They had a couple of guys. Parrish was one.
Or
might have been Or. Yeah. One of those two guys, and it was like a native, black native, and he's standing looking at this tiger, and the tiger has communism written on him. He says, "Come on, get on my back. I'll give you a ride." It says Africa. So it was a Pulitzer-winning cartoon, and that's my 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
There you go.
But oddly enough, it happened.
Yeah.
My mom's got the paper. It did have the paper. My mother's passed away since then, but somewhere.
One of the great stories that I remember from the assassination, again, it shows you how incredible the day was. Lyndon Johnson, the vice president, is, of course, there in the motorcade. Mm-hmm. He's hustled into a room by the Secret Service with Lady Bird and locked up so no one can get to him, and no one tells him a thing as to what's going on. No one gives him any information until a Secret Service agent opens the door and says, "Mr. President, do you wish to go back to Air Force One?" And that, when he says Mr. President, is how he learns that he's now the President of the United States and that Kennedy is dead.
See, they were used to treating him that way. He was the Vice President,
Yeah.
I mean, we had a little levity in his spot like that.
Yeah, can you imagine? I remember when FDR passed away, and they called Harry Truman in.
Yeah.
And
didn't tell him what it. They said he had to get to the White House immediately.
Yeah.
The weight of the world descended upon him, or something.
Right.
Like that,
Yeah.
He said the sun and the moon and all the planets fell on him.
Everything.
Yeah. Right.
Now that's another thing.
Couldn't believe it.
The way everything was then, the laws were, that was a homicide in the county of Dallas County, or that should have been handled there.
Yeah.
And they pushed it out, took the casket away.
There was no federal offense of murdering the president of the United States at that time.
So I mean, that's another thing that adds to the conspirators. But and the guy who did it did the original autopsy, didn't do autopsies, a naval officer or something.
And it was the first. And it was the first assassination in America of a president at which Robert Todd Lincoln was not present, because Robert Todd Lincoln, the eldest son of Abraham Lincoln, was in Washington D.C. in the White House the night that his father was murdered. He had just come back from the Army. He was on Grant's staff. He had just come back. He was one of those that turned down the opportunity to go to the theater with his mother and father. When Garfield is elected president in 1880, Robert Todd Lincoln is standing with him in the railroad station in Washington where Garfield is assassinated. He was talking with, because he was now an older man, and he was rising in Republican politics, and he's there as Garfield is assassinated. And then in 1901, Robert Todd Lincoln is present when William McKinley is assassinated. He's in the same city. He's there at Buffalo, New York. He's not literally there on the stage, but he's there in the city.
Was he attending the?
He was there for this big exposition that was being held in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So he was actually present at the assassination of all three of the presidents.
Wow.
He didn't live long enough to be in Dallas. I always said if he had lived long enough, he probably would have been in Dallas.
He would have been riding in a motorcade.
Yeah, but he would have been 110 years old or something.
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
And he, of course, comes to Chicago. He takes over the Illinois Central presidency of the Illinois Central after George M. Pullman. He was their attorney, and after Pullman died,
Isham, Lincoln,
and Beale. Yeah, and the Isham mansion is still standing as the Playboy Mansion at 1340 North State Parkway, and then Lincoln lived at like 1230. I love addresses. 1234 North Lakeshore Drive. The building is no longer there, but just south of there's 4 old buildings. Believe it or not, Victorian or whatever, 1880 buildings. Pre-Victorian, yeah. Well, not pre, but still there. On Lakeshore Drive.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. With the stone.
About a half mile south of the park. Then.
Yeah. And he was. It turned out that, and he was considered to be a presidential timber. I'm sure with the name he could have, carried through. But I don't know. I understand he did not have a great
relationship with his father.
Well, he also didn't have. He wasn't a very personable guy, from what I understand.
No.
And some people or some professions, for example. Probably shouldn't say this, but politicians or religious people, they have to get out and talk. You got to love people. The successful people and the successful leaders, they relate to people. You've seen it. We've all seen it, because we've all had bosses. And some bosses you just love to talk to. Others, why you weren't gonna get to first base. No matter how valid your talk was. And that was the impression I got of him, But there again, he was a private person, and maybe because of all the tragedy, and he had to put his mother away, and sees his father assassinated.
And all of his, his brothers all
died. They all died. He was the only one.
Ages.
Was he the one that discovered some papers that might have been hinted at a conspiracy against the father, they said, or must have been the one.
I don't know.
I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard that.
That he destroyed or something. That's according to one story, anyway.
By the way, while we're mentioning that, I don't know if people realize, but the park districts, the original 3 big ones set up were West Side, South Side, and Lincoln Park.
Mm-hmm.
And all the minor parks in Lincoln Park are all named for Lincoln's cabinet. Yeah. Hamlin Park, Hannibal Hamlin was his first vice president.
That's right.
There's
a Seward Park. There's a Stanton Park.
Seward's Icebox?
Seward's,
Seward's Folly,
Seward's Folly.
Alaska,
Wells Park.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Gideon Wells.
Gideon Wells was Secretary of the
Neptune,
Navy.
yeah.
So it's you wonder where the park names come from, and you think, oh well, you don't even think about it. Who's Stanton? Who's Seward?
But there's not a Cameron Park for his
No,
first because he was the soon to be eliminated Secretary of War.
Oh, he was. There's a school, Cameron School, and there's
Simon
also.
Cameron?
Well, I don't know what the first name is, but and then Salmon P. Chase, who was Secretary of Treasury, and there's a Chase Park.
Lincoln said that Cameron was not thoroughly dishonest. He wouldn't steal anything. He wouldn't, for example, steal a hot stove. But just about anything else was fair game.
Everything wasn't nailed down, huh?
Right.
We've all known people like that, haven't we?
Yeah, that's a great line, huh? Yeah, you would
steal a hot stove.
Yeah.
So he had some wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was incredible.
And the other thing too, Lincoln, I guess, wrote all his own speeches.
Sure. There were no speechwriters.
No speechwriters in those days.
You wrote them on the back of shovels and stuff?
On the back of, like me, on the back of envelopes. I
he had
save
notes,
every.
yeah.
He did.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true or not with the, Gettysburg
No,
Address.
he did not write it on the back of an. Although the
he probably had some notes he started with.
Yeah, probably.
he was working on it on the. They think he was working on it on the train going from Washington to Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And he had some time there in Gettysburg to work on it. So.
Yeah.
But what as people say, is they studied it. It couldn't have done a better job of making the use of language and the proper words.
It's very spare. It's not flowery. It's not florid.
It's true to the point.
But it hit the point, and that's the fun thing. I'm working on trying to tell a story, and I got a million different first sentences. The first sentence got to hit you right between the eyes. Hopefully,
it's appropriate to talk about this because the Gettysburg Address was delivered on November the 19th. So we're just 2 days away from the anniversary. 2 days past the anniversary of the delivery. It was November the 19th, 1863. And the interesting thing about that, of course, is that the organizers of the event didn't really expect Lincoln to attend. They only invited him as a courtesy.
Yeah, who was the big orator? The orator?
Edward Everett was the principal speaker, spoke for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And people hear that and they think, my God, what a blowhard. Well, but he was expected to speak. If he had not spoken for 2 hours, they wouldn't have felt that he had done his job. You were expected to expound at length like that.
Yeah.
So, but Lincoln was just remarks. I think in the official program was just remarks from the president, which means keep it short.
Yeah, right. It's not a
And
they're not the main speaker.
No.
They show a couple of pictures were taken, and one guy wasn't even in focus yet for taking the photo, figuring that
he's got his
he'll be there for a little while longer yet, but he wasn't.
Yeah. I just saw something. There's a book on. I can't think of the name, but it says Hoofs and something or other, but it's about Chicago's presence in the Civil War. And they mention there's a little street out by the Museum of Science and Industry called Everett. And it's named, it only runs 2 blocks from 54th to 56th or so, and it goes into the park.
Yeah.
They said it's named for Edward Everett, who was the orator.
He was one of the most distinguished men of his time. He had been governor, a senator. He had been ambassador to Great Britain, I believe. He was a learned man. He was a well-known, popular, one of the finest speakers in the nation.
Was he a United States senator at the time of?
Not at the time of the Gettysburg Address, but he had held all of those offices.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of these, elder statesman, public orator, and the sort of person you would invite to something like this to lend weight to
like
it, prestige.
Yeah. Like a William Jennings Bryan.
Yeah,
later,
right.
Like that, right.
Great
or
speaker.
Daniel Webster,
Or Don Rickles.
Or,
and Daniel Webster, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's I wonder if Edward Everett Horton was.
I'm sure he must have been named for him.
He was named for him, but
it must have been. It wouldn't be a coincidence to have those names together.
Well, I was named after John Wayne.
John Wayne?
A long time after him.
A long time after.
But, I was just thinking the same thing with Edward Everett Horton. That was too silly to say.
Yeah,
Thanks for bringing it up, Ken.
Well, because
fractured.
Well, how many people? There are some people that go around with using the middle name. Most of us don't, but he did.
They did a great movie. One of these TV movies. Jose Ferrer portrayed Edward Everett. And they did the story of the Gettysburg Address, and they showed a scene when they're leaving the rostrum, the platform, Everett had been very critical of Lincoln. He was one of those who didn't think Lincoln was up to the job of being president, didn't think that he had the talent, the ability. And the true story that as they were leaving, Everett came up and said, "Mr. President, it's well known I've been very critical of you. I want you to know that I wish that in 2 hours of oratory I could have come as close to the purpose of this event as you did in barely 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I'd like to shake." And he reached out and extended his hand.
That
And
meant
shook
a
hands
lot
with
then,
him.
didn't it?
Yeah. Lincoln. I think his whole cabinet felt that they were more qualified to be president.
Oh, every one of them. Every one of them.
And he
including Seward at the beginning. Seward came to be a great admirer of Lincoln.
Yeah, they all did, I think, and he wasn't afraid of competition. These weren't yes men, that's for sure.
It was somewhat similar to in recent years. Everybody was against Ronald Reagan saying the business about tear down Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, right?
Yeah, right.
And he said, "No, I'm going to say it."
And, he was told
the only thing he said. He didn't let into
Yeah.
it. If you this, if you that.
Yeah.
Tear downs turns out to be maybe declaring him at least a very fine statesman, if not great statesman.
Yeah.
The events that followed.
Yeah.
Between him and who? Lech Walesa, Pope, Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher. They and you see, 2 of them were attempted assassinations too. 2 of them were shot.
That's right.
So that did not happen by just by accident. There was I don't know if it was a conspiracy, but there was intent there.
They tried to talk Reagan out of that.
Yeah,
I remember the story.
Colin Powell.
The State Department, they
Schultz.
did not want him to deliver that
Schultz,
speech, and they finally had. I think it was National Security Advisor. Just the day before the speech, he sits down with them and lays out all the reasons why the State Department doesn't want this. And Reagan listened politely.
Yeah.
And he said, I've listened to everything you say. Now, I have just one question I'd like to ask you. I am the President of the United States, am I not?
Yeah.
And he knew right away that was the end.
That was the end of that.
argument.
Yeah. By the way, that Schultz was dean of the University of Chicago, and I heard him speak. He was a sharp guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was,
Well,
Mr. Schultz, but
sharp people can have disagreements and can be wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong or right.
Yeah.
But,
well, we've probably all had decisions to make in our own lives too, and you say, hey, this is the way it's got to go,
Yeah.
And,
One way for better or for worse or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.